In this week's video, we're taking the truck camper from this to this with the addition of a countertop and finishing off the bench seat area. Although we had used foam to build the bench seat, we ultimately decided to return to using wood for the countertop storage build. The foam being 1 inch thick took up a lot of space, and I wanted to be able to have narrow drawers and cubbies that I could fit more things into. So we still wanted to keep this build really lightweight, and so we're starting off here with a 1/4 inch sheet of plywood. We designed the cabinet to stick out about 14 inches from the sidewall, and so the first thing that we had to do was cut the plywood into 14-inch strips and then start measuring the back of the truck and cutting out the plywood so that it would fit around the wheel well and all the little various edges that are on the truck bed and the sidewall itself. So we started out with a piece of cardboard to help us determine where we were going to need to make the cuts. And then I was able to trace that piece of cardboard onto a piece of plywood and go ahead and cut the plywood with a jigsaw so that it had a shape and a form that would fit into the side of the truck bed. Another thing that was nice about working with the plywood versus working with the foam is that it's a little bit easier to cut and manipulate. The foam cuts really, really nice and easy, but if you use the saw or things like that, you get a lot of dust from the foam, which isn't that great to have on your skin or in your lungs. Not that it's great to have sawdust in there either, but the sawdust is a little bit less irritating. At least for me, I can feel the foam dust on my skin, and the sawdust just wipes right off. So it was nice to be able to cut the wood without worrying about all that extra foam particulates. That being said, the foam bench is really sturdy and it's really lightweight, and I do like it. So if you can build a full build out of foam, that's great. And I think that'll work well for everyone too. After we had a few of the support pieces of plywood cut, we went ahead and cut a couple pieces that are going to go up on top. So the countertop and the top of the back unit, storage cubby unit. And then we set up a little mock-up demonstration of how that countertop area is going to look. I'm going to head back over to the saw here, and we're cutting some pieces of wood at a 45-degree angle that we'll put in the corners of the countertop and cubbies to try to keep the very thin 1/4 inch plywood secure and as close to a 90-degree angle as we can get it. So just gluing those to the plywood. And then there were several areas that we did also use a pin nailer to pin things together after they were glued. For most of this project, again, I'm still using that Type Bond 2 glue that I used for the exterior build. We had bought a lot of that, and so we had it there. Working to get as much surface area on the glue as possible for the best hold possible. This thing is going to be rattling around a lot in the back of the truck, so I wanted to make sure it was nice and secure. And then, of course, it's always a little hard to clamp those 45-degree angles, but we did our best to try to get a good, nice clamp there. And then we let that glue dry. Here you can see the pin nailer. We're going to just use an air nailer and stick those in for extra security. And there you can see underneath. And this is the taller section of the cabinet that's going to go back against the back window wall of my cab. We also made a little bottom cubby on this part of the cabinet unit. And you can see we used little pin nails in that as well. So again, glued and pinned. And then after we had the top and that bottom cubby on, we did go ahead and bring it out to the truck and set it up in there so you can see it being fit in around the rest of the build. And there's a little piece of crosswood that we were cutting and fitting to go at the level where we'll use another bench seat coming across from my foam bench to the plywood cabinet stand. So just cutting some pieces of wood to support that. And then we'll glue those in as well. So again, there's going to be a support on either side and then a piece of wood across, and that's going to hold another bench seat so that there is more seating in there. So the seating options are going to be on top of the cooler, on my foam bench, or on this bench seat that connects across. The bench seat that connects across was made to be removable so we can lift it up and I can get to storage underneath there. The main reason for that is that I'm going to store a portable toilet there for now, and it's really nice to just be able to lift the cover off the top or slide it out from underneath easily. All right, so after we had that gluing up, it was back outside. We got so lucky with some lovely end of February, early March weather this year. It's been one of the nicest winters in Minnesota in a long time, so we could go back and work outside. And so now we're cutting more like leg stand pieces that are going to be underneath the countertop itself. So not that back cabinet unit, but the countertop that goes in front. Again, using a jigsaw, and then we'd put them in the truck, see if they fit, and make slight adjustments as needed. Not quite as easy to shave things off as the foam, but we could sand things back and make nice little cuts with that jigsaw. Also, as you see me test fitting that piece in there, you can see that I'm avoiding the outlet. I really wanted to still be able to use that outlet if I needed it. So we ended up making the countertop a little bit less long so that it did not cover up that outlet cover. I do use that sometimes when I'm driving to power the cooler. Unfortunately, that little outlet does not have enough watt output to be able to charge up the jackery while I'm driving, but it does a really nice job of running the cooler. All right, so making a few more cuts in one of the other supports for the countertop. Back down in the wood shop, you can see we've still got pieces gluing on the back cubby portion of this countertop unit. And we did go ahead and just add a little extra support in so things don't roll off the top. We're going to make some edging for the top of the cubby. So cutting those at a 45-degree angle so that it's almost kind of framed out at the top of that. There's everything is on and gluing. And then it was time for a little bit more design process. So trying to figure out how deep we wanted each cubby to be and kind of where drawers are going to be. We did some drawing. And here you can see we've added now a shelf onto that back cubby. And then here everything is sitting together how it's going to ultimately end up looking. So you got the countertop and then the taller cubby portion in the back. We needed to connect those somehow. Technically, they do fit into the truck all as one unit, but it's a little bit tight. And so the back tall cubby portion is one piece. And then the countertop, we made a piece of wood that we can put a bolt through into a T-nut and tighten them together that way. So here I'm drilling pilot holes for T-nuts. Once those were drilled, we were able to pound the T-nuts into those holes. The goal was to pound those in as flat as we could get them so they didn't stick out too much. And then while I was working on some of that, my dad was working on cutting a hole for a sink to go into the countertop. So he cut that out mostly with a jigsaw, started by just screwing a hole to get kind of the center of it. And for right now, I'm just using a cheap plastic tub as my sink. We're going to route the edges of it so it's nice and smooth. Later on, I may upgrade that sink to something with an actual drain, but for now, I can just fill it up and then take it outside to a waste container and dump it. We wanted that sink to sit on something, so we did make a shelf for it. And so here we're just notching out some grooves that are going to go around some of the support pieces of wood in the countertop build. So just making those little notches so we have more glue area and everything fits in nicely. And so here you can see that we've put that shelf in now. And then at the same time, we did a shelf that goes in closer to the bottom. And this opening was made to be the right size to fit around my jackery. And then now we have that flipped over. We could put a bottom piece of wood on it that the jackery will sit on. Here are the two pieces we've got done so far outside. So you can see the taller piece that goes in the back with the cubby holes and the support around the bottom to hold the bench seat. And then you can also see the cabinet with the sink recess. Now I've got the back cabinet in the truck. And here you can see how we have some blocks so that we can screw it into the sidewall and attach it to the sidewall of the truck. And then in addition to screwing into the sidewall, we also screwed into the wall that goes behind my cab window. Did a little more routing of the edges just to keep things smooth. And then I routed a little extra right here because we were just a little tight. So essentially just shaving some of it back so that it fit a little bit better. And then now I'm gluing on a piece of wood that's going to be a support for that bench seat. This is going to be the piece of wood that actually supports weight when someone is sitting on that bench seat. And here we're back down in the wood shop, continuing to glue supports and shelves in. Lots of clamps required for this portion. Now we're going to put a countertop surface on the countertop. So we're just using cement glue. You can see that in my hand there. And that's something that we put on and it has to sit for just a little bit and then we compound it together. And back up in the truck, we're able to test fit the bench seat that I've made and get a support drilled onto the foam bench on the other side so that the removable bench seat is supported on both sides. Just drilling some pilot holes and then we'll put some bolts and nuts to hold that together. So here you can see that on the inside of the foam bench, we used a piece of wood that we drilled the bolts through, and that's just to keep them from pulling all the way through the foam and getting kind of recessed in there. And then we used nuts on the outside that they threaded into. After we were done with that, we had had enough time that we could go down and actually work with the countertop that we had the glue on. So we're going to place that on top of the countertop it's supposed to go, and then we're going to use a rubber mallet and pound it down, and that'll keep everything stuck together. And after it was pounded down and it sat for a little bit, we went ahead and rounded the corners to get a nice smooth edge so we didn't have the sharp countertop edge. Get nice rounded corners too, less to bump against. And then we had to drill into that countertop to find that sink recess. After we had the spot drilled into, we went ahead and used a router to outline the area that the sink goes in. And so we essentially just routed out the hole for the sink. You had to be a little bit light with the router there, but mostly it was just following the edge that we had already created when we had routed the wood first. So that went pretty well. We were happy with how easy that went. And voila, the sink fits in. So everything's looking good there. And you can see it sitting on that little shelf that we had made for it. So it sticks up just a teeny tiny bit. And it is made to be removable, so I can take it out to dump. After we had the sink in, it was time to start working on some cabinet drawers. It's always nice to have a couple of drawers in a cabinet unit. So we went ahead and we made those out of wood as well. So here we're just cutting a groove in the sides of the drawers. And that groove is going to be for a 1/4 inch piece of plywood to sit and be connected. So the sides of the drawers are going to be out of thicker wood, so we can make a nice groove for a drawer slide. And then the front and back are made out of 1/4 inch plywood, as well as the bottoms. The fronts are recessed in, and so we can kind of have a thicker false front on it. The backs are just glued straight to it, and the bottoms are glued straight to it, and those are pin nailed in as well. So there's 2 drawers. One's a little deeper than the other. And behind there, you can see the countertop. We used a router. This one's on a table, so we can get a really nice, even, straight cut to make the drawer slides. So recessed there, and then we're going to make a strip of wood that those sit on. While Dad was working on routing, I started working on cutting some plywood to make a front for the shelf that has the sink in it, just so that that's covered up and you're not seeing the bottom of the sink all the time, but can still store soap and things like that around it. And then Dad is back to working on that drawer slide, and he's making a little notch in it that's going to help hold the drawer in place while the truck is on the road so that it doesn't just fall out the whole time. And then there's my little front for the sink area, one of the drawers with the drawer slide cut. And then the cover for the sink is going to be just a fold down. So we've got little hinges for it, and then it's going to have a magnet closure. So just put that in there and marking where I need to drill the holes. Dad actually did the drilling here. He had a fun little bendy tool to get the right angle around for those holes. It's hard in those small spaces. And then we were back to making the supports of the drawers we're going to rest on. And so we made those kind of straight strips with rounded edges to match the drawer groove that we'd already put in. And then we cut a dowel to get that rounded little bump. And again, that's going to be the notch that you have to lift the drawer over so that it can kind of latch into place and not bounce out while I'm on the road. So far, I've tested this on OneDrive and nothing has bounced out, but we will see what happens. And here you can see those supports in place, glued onto the countertop unit. And then just a quick interlude here. The bench seat that's going to go across the middle, I covered in fabric and foam just the same way that I did the lid of the foam bench. And here are the drawers now that they are in the countertop unit. So this is the larger drawer, and you can see you kind of have to lift it up to get it out. And you can also see this one got a little crooked, so we're going to try to put the front of it on angled a bit so you can't see as much of that. But they pull out pretty easily, and then they lock into place, so they're not just bouncing out. And then we had to make and glue on the official fronts. So now they're getting that glued on with just a little knob for pulling it out. And there's kind of the final product. I may still end up painting or finishing this further. Right now it's just raw wood, but the design is done there. We did put a paste wax in the drawer glides just to help them like slide out a little easier and not get so stuck. So just putting that in. And then we weighed the cabinet unit. Came in at 21.6 pounds, which honestly, I'm pretty happy with. It's fairly liftable, easy to get in, and it provides me a bunch of storage and utility. So maybe it could have been a little bit lighter if we had done it in foam, but overall, pretty good. And obviously, the foam bench got heavier after I put the plywood and foam lid on top of it. So even if we had built the countertop out of foam, I still would have needed wood in a few places to be good supports. Maybe I could have gotten it 5 to 10 pounds lighter, but I definitely wouldn't have had as narrow of spaces for the drawers and the cabinets. So I really did reclaim some space by using something that's a 1/4 inch thick, the plywood, versus the 1 inch thick foam that I used in the bench seat. The next steps on this build are smaller tasks. We're going to go ahead and improve a few things that I noted issues with while I drove to Alaska. And I'm also going to do a little bit of interior design, so adding some curtains and things like that on the inside. And then I'm headed out to Utah with the truck in April. So I hope to get a few travel videos out to you guys at that point. And then when I return this summer, I'm going to give that full pop-up build one more attempt and see if we can get that full pop-up design working nice and smoothly. So please stay tuned if you're interested in the full pop-up, interested in Utah adventures, or just want to see some of the things that needed upgrading after a trip to Alaska. Thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate your support. I was so excited this week to reach that 1,000 subscriber mark, and each and every one of your comments and views means a lot. As a small channel just starting out and learning the skills of video editing and all of that, I really appreciate the support of each and every one of you. All right, have a great week.